All right, for those of you listening to this on YouTube, timestamp in the comment section because we're going to be setting up at first and it's a lot of boring crap. And as always, look at the timestamp. Usually I remember. Yeah, sometimes life happens.
Hey.
Hello, everybody. All right.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello there.
How you doing, John?
So good. So good.
How was your 22nd birthday?
Is it your birthday?
No, a couple of days ago.
Oh, happy birthday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The big 2-2.
Yeah, I wish.
Did you have a good time? Do anything fun?
I'm doing a lot of interesting little side things right now. I'm actually getting. I can't keep this. I'm not like you'd tell anybody, but
wait. I'm streaming online, so let me stop it. So next week we're gonna do a fun mailbag episode or whatever, kind of.
Nice.
Sounds good.
Sound kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yes.
Somebody thing about it, but to respond to for the show. But man, it sucks because I have so many Twitters and so many emails that people sometimes will tweet me at my personal email or at the Watch and Talk email something about the Deuce. Oh, I found it. What's happening? What is somebody scraping?
That was me. Sorry.
Somebody tweeted something interesting or sent an email, but I just found the Watch and Talks email. All right, let's see. Shakita's there. Sorry,
Shakita!
Sorry we left and came back, Shakita. We were going over some top secret. Oh, that's why we left and came. All right, so all right, let's rock and roll. Welcome to the Deuce Drop. I'm Dylan Shuck.
I'm John Booker.
And I'm Gina Murtalo.
In this podcast, we're reviewing the season finale of the first season of the HBO original series, The Deuce. And big shout out to our Patreon supporters. If you want to be a supporter of the show, you can go to patreon.com/The Watch and Talk. And big shout out to our premium supporters, Shakita, June, and Kaka. As always, as a heads up, the show has extremely mature and graphic content, and we'll be doing a disservice to the listeners by not be willing to speak frankly, so here's your warning. Also, if you ever hear us refer to somebody in the chat, it's because we stream these episodes live on YouTube. You can just go and subscribe to the Watch and Talk on YouTube, and you'll get a notification every time we go live. Yeah, so we're going to do one more episode as a kind of whole season recap and mailbag episode. So while you guys are listening to this and as the week goes along, think of things to write in for us to discuss and have conversations about for the final episode. So because we want to hear from you guys and all that. So yeah, how we doing, guys?
Doing good. It was fun to see the Deuce end on such a strong note, I thought.
Sad.
Yeah, it really did.
It's bittersweet.
Very bittersweet. That was heartbreaking. I'm sure we'll get into this, but man, what a heartbreaking moment.
Either way, I'm just not ready to say goodbye to the show for an extended period of time because it feels like it's going to be a long time to have the show.
Yeah, 8 episodes was really quick.
Yeah, went by so fast.
Do you have any insight on, because I know Game of Thrones was usually 10 episodes. I think Leftovers was 10. Is it normal for HBO shows to have 8, or do you think this was some sort of kind of limited type of thing?
It's not normal, and my understanding is it was 8 episodes, mainly due to honor the schedules of the A-listers involved with the show.
Oh.
So, James Franco can only commit so much time, Maggie Gyllenhaal. So,
Right.
So all the seasons will be 8 episodes?
I think so. I think that's the plan, just because those are actors that work a lot. So I think the plan is to try and keep the season short. Plus, it saves HBO some money. This is not a cheap show to produce.
Right.
Especially because of the talent involved, right? Is that it's probably it's also a period piece, so they have to kind of change everything around the set.
And the special effects, because so many of those exteriors are created in post, with all the marquees and all that sort of stuff. So it's an expensive show.
All right, so before we get into this episode, I got one email that I wanted to discuss. Somebody that kind of wrote in about last episode. I was going to say this for the mailbag episode, but I feel like it'd be a good thing to discuss right now. So this is from a listener named AJ, and it says, I picked up on something in the episode you might find interesting. Earlier in the podcast, you pointed out how Rudy refers to Mike, Big Mike, as my friend when discussing the plans for the movie parlors, and commented how it was a bit strange of them to think of them as friends. If I remember correctly, Rudy actually refers to Mike as a friend of mine, which seems like a minor distinction, but has an important and specific meaning to the mobsters. A friend of mine is used in conversation to refer to an associate of some sort who is not in the mob, but who may be engaged in some kind of criminal enterprise. Whereas if he'd used a friend of ours to refer to a member of the mob, it would be a made man. And since Mike isn't in the mob, he used mine instead of ours. So
that is really interesting.
I think so too.
In light of what happens in this last episode, that's really interesting because I think we get, further clarity on the separation between civilians and mobsters. Right. So that's really good.
So he says, I think this is a bit of a code to sound like nothing in particular to anyone that happens to overhear. Also referring to a friend of mine is sort of like saying nobody worth knowing to his fellow mob.
You know what's really funny? Personal anecdote, but I'm a teacher, and in the teaching world, when you're working with kids, a lot of the times if you're talking to another staff member about a kiddo who's maybe having a hard time or something like that, we always say like, oh, my friend. Just because we don't want to say their name, especially if like kids are around. You're like, oh yeah, my friend is like having a rough day today, or like, can you keep an eye on my friend right now?
There is so many similarities between the teaching profession and mobsters.
I guess so.
I think there's
really
more
just when you're trying to speak in code.
There's more similarities than there are things that separate them.
Yeah, perhaps. I don't know. Just funny.
AJ also closes the email with, I can't leave this information out. It says, love the show.
Aw.
Thanks,
yeah, thank you.
Love you, AJ. All right, let's get, I don't know if you guys are interested, but I'm interested in getting to this episode, shall we?
Let's do it.
Yes.
Episode is called My Name is Ruby, and that is Ruby's famous last words, unfortunately. And it was directed by Michelle MacLaren, which is arguably my favorite TV director, I'd say.
Yeah.
Yep.
I talk about her all the time.
She's great.
Yep.
So, this great shot in the opener of seeing, and this was a little longer of an episode. It was about a minute and 10, or I'm sorry, an hour and 10 minutes about. It was longer than the average episode.
Yeah.
Cram a little bit more in there, which I'm not going to complain about. So there's a great shot of Frankie looking at the porn in the masturbatorium, and it's like almost projected over his face, which I think is this really good like HUD display, like Iron Man. I mean, it's a weird comparison, but it's true. And it, has the dude set a special up for Big Mike and kind of gives him a little practical joke.
That was pretty funny.
Isn't there just a cartoon playing, and he's, I can hear you. I can hear you unzipping your pants immediately. But it's also funny, too, from Big Mike to think, hey, he set up a nice porn for me to look at. Like, it's just really funny. It's like a friend coming into your room and clicking on Pornhub.com and hitting enter and be like, there you go, got this set up for you. I'm going to leave you alone. Here's some losh, and close the door behind you. Friends
Thanks
don't
for that.
Friends don't typically do that. I mean, they should. They should do it more. So, anybody interested?
Oh.
But John, you were going to say something before I made it think.
I was just going to say, I love Big Mike. This is a character that the first time he was on screen, I did not care for because I thought
he made it seem like he's a creepo.
Yeah, I thought he was a creepo, but he's become one of my favorite characters. I love Big Mike.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, when we first see him, we're like, ooh, like don't interact with him. And for some reason they set him up like that, and it turns out that there's more to him than just a big creep.
There is. I feel like I may have sort of called that way back when, because I don't know. I just always was really intrigued by him.
Yeah,
thought even in that moment, even in the weird moment, I'm like, there's something more going on here. So
fair enough, but
I'm glad he proved me right.
It seemed they kind of let us like him before that episode was over. Like it was like at first, at the beginning of the episode, we were like, "Whoa, this guy's a serial killer." Remember, a hooker goes up to him and like says, "Hey, buddy, looking for a good time?" Yeah, right. They go for a good time, and he's just like, and she's like, I am getting away from you because I don't want to be viciously murdered in the street."
Right.
So I love I really love the early days of porn analytics.
Yeah.
Isn't that fun?
What's
I've been
interesting
doing some
is
science.
Now the analytics around the porn industry are they put so much money into it. And it's interesting to kind of show this early days of it but that's really smart to be counting the quarters for the machines and seeing, and when nobody's around where, it's complete honesty when people do it. That the popular stuff was, lesbian stuff was very popular, which obviously wouldn't be surprising to that many people, but black guy, white girl.
It's what stood the test of time.
And then black guy, white girl was extremely popular. And then some weird Danish stuff, and they pretty much talked about bestiality. And they said they didn't put any labels on it, but the customers find it.
Does the Watch and Talk podcast network have a porn review podcast? Dylan, I'm not up on that.
We're in the works of it, but nothing yet. But if you're interested in listening to me review porn, tweet us in at the Deuce Drop and let us know that we'll have your support. So very much, everybody. Anyway, so what's it called? I like when like always, Candy has a way of explaining, or Eileen is pretty much Eileen. She has a way of explaining something in this super sexualized way that just steals everybody's attention.
Yeah, she knows what she's doing.
And he asks, why do you think that is? Why do you think this stuff is the popular stuff? And she basically says these guys have been taught that women can take it or leave it with sex, and then they get this fantasy that we're selling them that they can see that women want it just as bad as they do.
Yeah, and I'm getting the vibe, just the way she's filming things, that she's really starting to pick up that it is about the fantasy. It's not just about the sexual act. And I feel like that is such an interesting thing to see in like the history of porn. Right. Because now it's all fantasy. It's these like really insane storylines, kind of.
You guys
and
know
different
like the
ideas.
Most popular porn that's going out there right now, like the biggest popular thing right now is this ongoing thing of stepsister. Like there's this onslaught of stepsister porn. And that's just another example of analytics. People are obviously clicking those like crazy, and for some reason somebody's sitting there in the studio and be like, guys, these are getting all the hits, we're gonna make a whole like series of these. And it's just not that I obviously for research for the podcast I've looked at the porn site from time to time, and it's literally half of it's half of it. It seems like. Or
and
this has been your educational moment here on the Deuce Drop.
Go ahead.
Join us next week, and Dylan will talk us through his personal porn preferences.
John's never been on them. Anyway, because John's secretly being like, I know what he's talking about, but I'm saving face for the podcast. But anyway, another also these fake like audition ones also are very popular, and it's interesting to see like how these fantasies are sold to people. And Eileen
Yeah.
obviously had this down 50 years.
Right. It's total like fantasy. And I think it's interesting to think of the shift from, and it seems like the show is getting at this, the shift from actually going and having sex with a prostitute, which is, there's some fantasy involved there, but it's very real. I mean, the men know that these women do this as a living, and it's just really gritty and kind of real.
And
And
they're
then
also
porn,
not seemingly interested in selling a fantasy to them. They're like,
right? Yeah, they're
use
not
my body
really.
and then give me my money and shut the fuck up.
Yeah, and then there's the shift into the fantasy, so they're kind of trading the realism in for like customized tastes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the show is going to really explore kind of the movement into that, because as you've said, nowadays it's like anything goes.
Not that I would know. Not that I would know.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really interesting point, though, because I think you are starting to see a psychological shift, as well, in the way that that people are forming attitudes about illicit sexuality, because there obviously is still a shame component to some degree, like there was back then, but porn has become very mainstream also in our day and age. It's almost interesting to look back and see.
Talk about it on a podcast and not feel too ashamed about it.
It's almost like that, right?
Yeah.
But you should feel ashamed, really.
Yeah, but it's interesting in the episode.
Right now.
Candy asks, "You mean they're showing this movie like out in public?
Right.
Like you can go to?" She's even amazed, being a sex worker, that it's sort of raised its head into the light.
Uh-oh. Is that me, or did I lose? Gina, you there? I can't hear anybody. Hi, guys, can you hear me? Uh-oh, I don't hear anybody. Frozen. Frozen in time. I don't hear anybody. You guys say in the chat if you guys can hear me. You hear me, Shakita? This happened earlier today, Shakita. It's happening again. Hey, John. Oh, for fuck's sake. Okay, try talking. Try talking now. Hang up again. Let me try calling one more time. Give me good news. I don't know what the fuck to do. I guess I'll restart Skype, guys. I'm sorry. I'm gonna hang up the calls again. I'm gonna restart Skype altogether. I hear it.
You played a
Pat. I mean, if I restart Skype, it's gonna take time, but no, it's not gonna suck to edit this because I'll get to where that happened and just cut from there and start it back wherever we start. So it'll actually be pretty easy when we figure it out. The real stuff is when it's like, if this happened like 5 times in the middle of a conversation, that would suck. Skype takes so long to start up on a Mac. Yeah. Adios, mi hijo. Bye. For Skype to back up. See, this is the fun stuff that listening to this live gets a whole different experience. All right, let's pray. I'm hoping and wishing. Oh, that sounds good.
Hello.
Oh, bingo!
Do you hear us?
I can hear you,
Do you
John.
hear me?
I can hear you, John.
You can hear me, Gina. He can't hear
I'm
you.
here.
Gina's.
I'm here.
I can hear Gina.
Let's continue without Gina.
Hey.
I'm just kidding. I can hear you, Gina.
Aw.
Funny prank, big prank of the year.
Trickster.
Do you remember what we were on?
John was talking about something good.
Oh, so whatever. We can sweep the rug. Yeah, John's inside is the one thing that we want to sweep under the rug, right? John, do you remember where you were?
I don't.
We were
talking about how it's.
Oh yeah, now I remember.
Psychological change.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So I guess
Eileen,
what I was saying.
Eileen even talks about how when she's talking to her brother, and obviously we'll talk about this later, but she says the world's changing, and that's one of the biggest themes about the show. I think is a big cultural shift that was happening, right?
Yeah, it's this cultural shift that's going from a time where even those involved with the adult industry at that time are surprised when culture starts giving these small acknowledgments, to the adult industry. So we see this in Candy being shocked that they're showing Deep Throat at a public theater in New York City. In a lot of this episode,
to be this big shocking moment, but again, need to be a broken record. But they spoiled this fucking moment that would have been great in the trailer.
Yeah.
Why'd you do that?
Well, we forgot to talk about. I forgot to talk about it last episode, but Paul's guy he's hooking up with says like, "Oh, there's this movie where." I think it's like the girl, like the vagina is in the girl's throat. That's the plot of Deep Throat.
It's actually the clitoris that's in the girl's throat.
The clitoris is in the girl's throat. And he's like, yeah, there's this movie where like the clitoris is in the girl's throat. And right when he said that, I was like, oh, it's Deep Throat.
Yeah.
And then we just didn't mention it. But yeah, so they were kind of planting that seed minus the trailer. They were kind of alluding to that.
There's a really interesting documentary called Inside Deep Throat. It's Inside Deep Throat, and it actually delves into the mob's connections to the making and distribution Deep Throat. So if you're really into sort of this time period and what was happening historically with the Deuce, check out that documentary Inside Deep Throat, because it really gives you a lot of the historical context of the mob figures that were involved. And even the guy that directed Deep Throat is in the documentary, and his wife still in the documentary doesn't want him talking about the specific mobsters involved. She's still afraid of those people.
Did you know before you watched that documentary that the mob was so involved in the porn industry? I had no idea at all.
I have been, I think I mentioned in our very first episode of the podcast, I've been really interested. I don't know. I've been really interested in the seedy side of Times Square. And so I've read a lot of books about that era. And so I only knew because I, have read a lot about that era and sort of what happened. But I don't think that's very common knowledge. I don't think many people know. Yeah.
Where do you know if this Inside Deep Throat is available? Was that on HBO? Was it an HBO documentary?
It actually was an independently released film. It was available on Netflix for some time, but I believe for sure on Amazon, you can rent it. But it's pretty widely available. It's not anything that's hard to find.
I'll try to check that out before we do our bonus episode.
Yeah, you should. Yeah. It's fascinating.
All right. Well, one other thing I was going to say, too, was we'll talk about it later. Never mind. So there's Pimp sitting around talking about how they took over Reggie's girls, and they have a little moment of silence for him, seemingly. And this is the only real ramifications from Reggie's death. If I want to talk about one disappointment, I kind of am disappointed at how Reggie's death was kind of swept under the rug. Like, we never even found out. I know it's not super important, but I would like to hint about what happened to Leon also.
I was waiting for that.
Yeah.
Again, not super important, but I really kind of needed that.
Yeah.
I was more concerned about the Leon factor. His death, they do actually give more screen time to later in the episode when the two girls are chatting, and she asks which pimp is better, and she says, can I have a minute here to mourn, my pimp?
Is she really mourning Reggie? Like, I don't think she really is, but it also shows the psychological control they have over you.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's the proof of that psychological control, where any person on the outside would go, oh, she should be happy that this oppressive man is out of her life. But when there's a dependency there, and it's a father figure and a boyfriend figure, it's like super complicated.
She's not connecting with Cece.
It's almost like
she lost her major male figure in her life, so I would assume one would grieve in that situation.
It's almost like that this scene, much of the show, is about the dynamics of power.
All right, if anybody out there wants to get drunk, take a shot every time John says power.
We're gonna get
take
sued.
A shot every time I say yeah.
We're gonna get sued.
And take a shot every time Dylan talks about porn. You're gonna have a good night out there.
Yeah, but I was gonna say she's not connecting with Cece, and it shows that in many scenes. There's even a scene at the end in the final montage where Cece and Lori are doing coke together, and they're in each other's arms, and I don't remember her name, but that one is rolling her eyes over in the corner, and
Melissa.
She gets up and kind of storms away, not connecting as a pimp.
Right.
Also, Larry seems to kind of think he's kind of unsatisfied with the work, right? They kind of talked about how they don't know what to be doing in this new age, right? Where they don't really have problems to solve.
Right.
They just sit back and collect their money.
Which I would love to just sit back and collect money.
Yeah, but
personally,
me too. Trust me. But they've talked about how they kind of like their work, right? They feel like they're in power. John, go ahead.
No, it's almost like there's a dynamic of shifts of power, which is every single scene in this show, which is great.
We need to rename the podcast. By the way, we've somehow completely desensitized the term the Deuce drop. Like, I don't even think of it as a poop pun anymore.
I was telling a friend over the weekend about this, and I kind of forgot the connotation.
Right.
And then I had to catch myself and be like, so here's the story. We knew it was going to sound like poop from the beginning. Because I was, just like, oh, yeah, it's called the Deuce drop. And
and by the way, we're like, there's no way to make one without a poop pun from it, right? And then somebody made up a one, and not to give a shout out to another podcast, but whatever, I don't care. It's called the Deuce-cussion. And I'm like, oh,
I feel
shit,
like that's reaching.
No, but I'm like, they made one. Oh, come on, let's not throw salt in the podcast publicly. Just let's do that privately. But I'm like, oh shit, they came up with one that's not a poop pun.
That's true.
Hats off. That's impressive.
Hats off for not having a poop pun. That's very impressive in this day and age, regardless of it being a part of But yeah, so it seems like he's ready for something new. But Rodney and Cece are like, nope, we're good with what we got. And Larry's kind of like, oh, okay, can't really talk to them. Something different's going on with Larry than Rodney and Cece.
Yeah.
Sandra's article is getting cut, and they, they name names but no sources, which is good. Is actually proper journalism, right? So
right.
So unless you can get people on the record or she can get proof, they can't go. So
now,
she kind of tries to get Alston the rest of the episode to go on the record.
Is that a thing in these days? It's hard to tell, but in journalism, sometimes they will say, to protect someone's identity, or if it's a real insider, like they can't say the name. So would we assume that the actual newspaper or source does have a name? They're just not going to give it out. That's like the proper.
They can give a name
if
they have verified sources, multiple sources, or they have somebody on record.
Right, but they still aren't going to say the name of that person in public. But we are trusting that these news outlets really do have like a legitimate source. They know the name.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm sorry. What agreement did you guys just come to that they wouldn't say the name even if they'd had somebody go on record?
No,
there is an actual person that the news organization knows who the person is. Right. It's not like a situation where someone anonymously sent in a letter and said this stuff. They actually have talked to someone who said this, but that person doesn't want to go on the record. We were just agreeing that the news organization does know who the source is. They just don't have or they don't have permission to use the person's name in the story.
So her boss just needed to know who it was and have something on record, and she didn't get that.
Because their reputation's on the line.
Right.
Yeah. So Alston and Flanagan see Sweeney come in and shake somebody down, and they one of them, his partner, records everything on a little note. And this is just saying the place they need to go talk to and how much they need. And he says that he thinks the new commissioner is going to make some changes. And Flanagan's like, well, if we turn down money, everyone's going to think we're rats. I don't know even where Flanagan's moral compass is. He doesn't seem to be completely shady, but he seems totally okay with it. Like, he's like... I think he is. I don't think he's jonesing for it, but I don't think he's looking to change his life at all.
Right. I agree.
But I just don't think he wants to go to jail for it, so I don't think that he's like... So, anyway, so they agreed they're going to take whatever comes, but not to seek anything out. Seems like they're paired up right. Flanagan and all. So Rudy uses the VIP room, and he has an Asian hooker named Susie that he requests to be available every time he comes by. And
do you recognize her?
He
said he
at the Korean place. Right?
No, at the Hi-Hat. She was a cocktail waitress, and she walked by, and he eyed her up and down and said that he liked her. And then she ended up, and I think they do say something about that.
He said,
really
they do.
Kind of under the radar.
Like, the girl from the bar. Well, I didn't know she's turning tricks.
Yeah, there was a moment a few episodes back where he made it known that he liked her.
Also,
same girl.
Rudy offensively says not to let any African Americans sleep with her for pretty offensive reasons. Although I wouldn't mind
horrible.
I wouldn't mind a stereotype like that, to be honest. No, I do not have that stereotype ever in my life. So anyway, I can't say the same thing for JB. Anyway, they
Are you referring to penis size?
Yes,
Is
I
that
am.
what?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. So I wasn't sure if you were
Well-
making that clear enough there, Dylan.
We'll compare. We'll compare maybe if you everybody that tunes in for the mailbag episode next week. We'll
Talk about a power dynamic.
We'll have a new a new way of looking at the term bag in mailbag. So look forward to that.
Wow, Dylan, you are
Oh,
on
no.
a roll tonight.
All right, yeah, as opposed to normally on this on this podcast. Anyway, I like how Rudy's like, I love the mirrors on the ceiling, and Frankie's like, that was me, and Vincent's like, dude, quit your fucking ass kissing. And he's like, what? It was.
Yeah.
Vincent's just kind of over it. He's just increasingly frustrated in this episode.
Yeah.
Dylan, have you ever been in a scenario where you found yourself staring at mirrors on a ceiling?
I don't know where we're going with this at all.
Have you ever had sex with someone who had mirrors on the ceiling?
Oh, you're really seriously asking that? No, I've never. Anyway,
either,
moving on, I guess.
This one.
I felt like you were going somewhere to give us some insight.
No, I just think it's interesting to get, into a little bit of the personal side of Dylan Shuck on this podcast.
This
It's
isn't Love Line,
sort of
my
a
friend.
expose. I like it. I like it.
Oh no, I have not, but I'd be interested, I guess. So any fans out there, tweet me in at Chuckster and let's discuss. Anyway, Frankie and Bobby are counting stacks like a bunch of drunks. Like they're just like they're making a lot of money and they're super excited about it. And Vincent isn't. He's like, give me my take back of the hi hat. Like I need to get out of here. And then he's frustrated and he gets back to the bar and it's turned into some kind of venue that night. And knowing that John Booker would have some info on this, I wanted to do a little research on what this band was they're playing. And
Yeah.
the band is Question Mark and the Mysterians.
Yes.
The song's called 96 Tears. Is this a song you were familiar with, John, or anything like that?
Well, I was more familiar with the band than that particular song. This is, they really had done their homework to bring in this flavor of music, and you're starting to see some of the scene that would develop down in Greenwich Village that was sort of lurking around other parts of Manhattan at that time begin to form. And I'm just always really impressed with how much historical detail is leaned into on the show, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it never seems forced. They really do it very well.
I agree.
Where it's subtle, but you get the reference. It really fits in the context of the show.
Yeah.
And Big Mike kind of digs it, he says.
Yeah.
And then they're talking about, it's not a glam band. And Vincent overhears it and thinks that they're saying gangbang, which I don't really get
That
why
was
they
awkward.
had that. Or, is it because his mind is kind of being warped to go along with the porn that's going on in his life or something? I don't know.
I think a little bit, like a bit of a Freudian slip. Like he's got that kind of stuff on his mind. Also, he's just kind of out of touch. Like he's older than Abby. He doesn't really get why there's a band in the bar. Like he's a bit removed from that age group, that kind of cultural group of, college kids.
Right.
And so I think it was just kind of trying to highlight, oh, you don't get this at all.
Yeah, I think Vincent is such a blue collar guy that you're seeing this bar set at the intersection of blue collar working class stiffs, pun intended, and the art scene that's emerging in Manhattan. And they're all sort of rubbing shoulders up against each other because there's not been a culture arise yet that tells them, oh, only this group of people should like this type of music. That eventually happens, but when these things first emerge, you've got a lot of people unsure of who's part of the in group and who's part of the out group as far as these scenes go.
Got it. One thing I had to say, too, that's a little unrelated, completely unrelated. I did want to point out, actually, Shakita in the chat brought out episode, and I didn't even put this together, but DC never once brings up Ashley at all. He doesn't seem to care that he lost Ashley.
Oh yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah,
Not even brought up at all.
I guess
That's
he's just moving on.
Yeah, it's.
Huh.
I don't know. I wonder. I said last week I could see us never seeing her again. I kind of still want to kind of double down on that. I think that might be somebody we never even.
You know, I think it's interesting that these characters come into the Deuce and out of the Deuce via this bus station, which is a place that is, dedicated to transporting people. And so the Deuce sort of has this revolving door of the lucky ones make it out. But then you have, Thunder Thighs this week that doesn't make it out at all. And so I think there's a really interesting dynamic going on there that sort of is about movement and transportation and revolving doors and the dangers involved in that.
We get a complete juxtaposition with, like you said, Thunder Thighs not getting out, right along with another person that has gotten out. And we'll talk about that, obviously, when we get to it, but it did make sure to make a big scene out of this retired pimp. And that's an actor that was in The Wire.
He's been in every one of David Simon's shows. I love that guy.
So that was a much bigger moment for people that have viewed those. For me at the time, and then finding out afterward, actor from that scene makes. All right, so. Austin and Sandra are pretty serious these days. Also, I guess there's a rule anytime a female actress is on the show that they're going to have to, there's a nudity clause in their contract or something. Because it's shown every single actress on the show naked. That I can think of.
Yeah, this is America. Wake up, boys!
I love it.
They're very much equal opportunists when it comes with the nudity, at least among the females, for sure.
Equal opportunists among the females showing nudity. Yeah,
yeah, great.
We did see a very unglamorous penis scene, but that being said, it does not. It isn't showing nudity in a completely glamorous way necessarily on the show for the most part, so it's an interesting way.
Oh, you don't like seeing all the beautiful actresses' boobs all the time?
I'm not going to say that. I'm just saying.
And I have to look at
this fat
really
dude with a fake penis in her hand. Yeah,
it's true.
James Franco will never show his. Trust me.
That should be the name of this episode. James Franco will never show his.
But he won't. It's not fair. And I'm just talking about equal rights between men and women. That's no.
Want to see more? Basically, guys, petition to see more penises on the show. I'm right there with you. Equal opportunity. But I will say that it's not. I don't know. I don't want to say it's not showing it female nudity in this pornographic way. It's only showing it in a look. It's part of the job.
Right.
It's I don't know. I'm struggling to articulate what I'm trying to say, but I think people.
Yeah, it's not going to sound right coming from a guy. So you should.
That being said, big fan of the boobies. Big fan of the boobies. So thumbs up to the boobies. So she seems to bring up the article right after sex with Alston. And he's like, but I'm not a source, remember? And basically tries to get more. And I like when she sparks up a joint. And he says, what makes you think I won't put on cuffs right now? And she's like, maybe you will.
So the arc I've experienced with Big Mike of going from disliking to really liking, I've had the exact opposite with her, because honestly, she is so using him that it's not even funny, and I don't know, it's kind of getting gross to me how she's using him.
For me is when she went to his work, and I'm like,
yeah, that was
you're putting him in his life in danger.
Yeah, she's doing anything for the story here.
Yeah, she's
using him. She's fully using him. He's definitely a source. Yeah.
So Eileen walks in while Harvey's talking to a new girl. She had just driven there to get into the biz, and they're both kind of taken aback by her. And she's a housewife, and she owns an adult bookstore, and she was a dental hygienist. And she said, "I see what you guys do. I think I could do it." It's really interesting too because Harvey says this is one of the actresses, and she has this kind of blank look on his face, kind of being like, "That's not what I want to be." And then he's like, "And my assistant."
Mm.
So here's what I thought was super interesting about this woman is here in the early days of porn, we have this quote unquote normal person coming wanting to do porn. Then porn goes through this cycle where it's these porn stars and porn actresses that become part of the culture. And now where we sit right now, we're really back in the age where amateurs are again at the top of the porn heap. That is, what people want to see more than porn stars.
Right.
People, cam girls that run cam sites out of their own home, make far more money than the average porn star these days. So I think it's super interesting that we've sort of come full circle, and that was important to show that was a thing in the early days of porn.
Yeah. Also, most of the porn stars they had before this were prostitutes, right?
Right.
And now you have one that's a housewife, and they were like talking about the roles she could play.
Yeah.
Part of the fantasy. And like John just talked about a bunch of things, and he doesn't get made fun of when he talks about it, but no, Dylan just gets made fun of.
I was thinking in my head, like, John knows a lot about porn.
Yeah. Just like all the listeners.
I read a lot. What can I say? I read a lot.
Why can't Gina do the research so it won't be weird? Gina!
Because I don't want to. I'm not interested in this.
Do the research. Gina will be a cam girl for this next week.
No, I won't.
And we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it when off the air. But
no, we won't.
Look for her on the campsites at Gina Mertalo, and she'll just try to get some research for the show going. Anyway, does anybody else think that Harvey is totally in love with Eileen?
Yeah.
I think he is really sweet on her, and I think he sees her as being a little bit out of his league, and it's sort of sweet.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, he's smitten.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I don't feel like he's a guy that can't sleep with anybody because he's coming from a position of power, and I'm sure he used that to get women. But you could tell that that doesn't necessarily work with her, and he's playing it slow, and he has a little hope somewhere in there. Something could work out between.
The way he talks to her in certain moments is when you really see that he likes her.
Right.
Like, he just talks to her in a softer tone, like a quieter tone. He does it really subtly, but I think that's why we're getting
and
that
he talks to her
feeling.
with respect because he knows that she commands it and she deserves it.
Yes.
I think that we discussed this, that you said that the actor that's playing him, and I'm trying to stall while I'm looking it up on IMDb for Harvey. I'm stalling.
Michael something?
There are so many people in the show. Looking through the freaking list, and I wish I had just kept going. But now I felt like I've committed to it. What the hell? You know what? Control F or Command F.
Just look up 10 things I hate about you.
Harvey. Oh yeah, David Krumholtz.
David. I was off.
We discussed on the show he had gained a bunch of weight because of like a thyroid issue he had, or a thyroid disease.
I think he had cancer or something,
right? And they got it taken
that
care
affected
of,
it.
and he lost a bunch of weight afterward.
Yeah, so I'm assuming we're gonna get a skinnier Harvey next
That's what I'm
season,
wondering.
which
Yeah,
will
I'm
be
wondering
interesting.
if he did
I bet
lose the weight, if he is then gonna be a part of it, or is he gonna have to wear a fat suit or something like that?
I don't know. I bet they'll work it in to the story.
I just Googled his name and weight loss, and nope, doesn't seem like it. They're just talking about his weight gain, and
Oh,
so
I
maybe
know.
not. So maybe not. Anyway, so Vincent, who's been increasingly frustrated, he brings some food for Abby in the morning, kind of sweet of him. He's crashing his place, and he's like, he liked the rock and roll show idea, and her and Paul get a third of the take if they want to keep that up. It's really interesting to see. You know what's frustrating about the show is it makes it seem like it's so easy just to, every idea they have just starts cranking in money, but it kind of shows that there was this black hole, or this void that was ready to be just filled so quickly with capitalizing off of indecency in general, right? Because they're just making money on any idea they come up with.
Yep.
And everybody gets a cut. Did we lose John?
No, I'm here. I'm
captivated by my
captivated by your. You know, it really is interesting, and I think it's a fair critique of the show because there were certainly lots and lots of things that did not work as far as entrepreneurial ideas down in this area in this part of history. But you know, I think they're trying to maybe still establish in this first season all these things that are going on so they can branch off into them, you know, as the show goes forward in future seasons.
And then he randomly off-cuffed, and I think you should, which I think was really fun.
Yeah. After he delivers her like an egg McMuffin in bed.
Right.
That's when you pop that question. He knows what he's doing.
But it's just, in general, it's just kind of, it's kind of adorable.
They're very cute.
But then she's like, she talks about how, a bunch of adorable moments that he talks about how she's smarter than him and he's the most beautiful girl he's ever been with. And if you want to fuck somebody, go fuck somebody, no questions asked. And that he'll take the garbage out. Clear that up. These are things.
Yeah, I thought that was a great little moment for him.
But yeah, it seems like she doesn't give an answer, but it seems like that's where.
Yeah, she seemed to be liking. You could just see in her face that like little smirk and smile, and I mean, she likes him. So
he got Harvey got an invite to an X-rated movie premiere at the General Admission Theater, and we kind of discussed this earlier. But that's another thing that, while it was becoming more mainstream at the time, it's also then with the invention of the internet, it's contracted, and people have been able to be more private about it. Not everybody has a podcast where they talk about their porn use on it. But you would never see porn at a General Admission Theater now.
Well, in that particular film, they're referring to Deep Throat was sort of the launch of the mainstreaming of porn. It was a big deal because celebrities started going to see that film, and it became like a thing in pop culture people would talk about. So you had people like on The Tonight Show talking about it. And then most famously, a journalist took a picture of Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis going in to see Deep Throat. And so, she was seen as sort of the height of class. And so this person that represented classy America went to see, this movie Deep Throat. And if you've ever seen the film, it is graphic. I mean, it's not like softcore porn. Could
you imagine Michelle Obama going to a porn premiere? Like that's the equivalency. Yeah. All right, that's like the bizarre. I didn't know that, John Booker. That's something you should have led with that.
You should watch that documentary Inside Deep Throat. It gets into a lot of that.
But yeah, he makes a gay slur to Eileen, and she's like, "Don't do that," which is the weird at the time to even hear that. Like, I'm just so not used to anybody saying, "Hey, don't say that about gay people." On this.
Yeah, they've said a lot of really offensive things about a lot of groups on this show, so this was the first time where I heard some pushback, which good for her.
Right, and then she says she has a brother, and we didn't know about that either. Beat her pretty.
Well, we knew she had a brother, but we didn't know what the situation was. So immediately when she said that, I got excited. I thought, okay, we're going to find out more to this story. I'm really intrigued in her story. And I feel like they're kind of dangling out little carrots for us to try to figure it out. So I was glad they dove into that a little more.
So Rudy comes and shows Vincent and Frankie and Bobby a new location. And Vincent's not into it. He's like, dude, we just wanted to get a little extra money, and now my brother-in-law and my brother are trafficking hookers at this point, basically.
So, question for you guys though. This is one of the few narrative points in the show that I am not resonating with. Why is Vincent pushing back so hard on making more money with these guys? Because it seems like he really gets upset about it. He really doesn't want to do it, but there doesn't seem to be a good reason why.
I think he says it. What I understood was that he's like, hey, at first it's happening too quickly. At first, I was just trying to pay off some gambling debt for my brother, and now look what's happening. Right now, there's this.
But what's the downside in it for him? Like, what's the risk for him?
I mean,
well, and remember at the very beginning, his wife or ex-wife was talking about how he could have been a made man and he didn't want that. So he may have a bit of an aversion to the mobsters.
Maybe
and
that's
so
it.
maybe he's wary of that. And he was like, well, I was into it when it was just kind of like a business relationship. Now we're getting, multiple places. And I feel like maybe he's getting nervous about that.
He sees what's going on with his brother or with his brother-in-law. And the one deal he made with him was that he wouldn't fuck around on his.
Exactly.
Yeah, that didn't last.
No, they're just friends.
Oh, that
was my favorite.
Butter ring.
She's just my friend.
So anyway, and then Bobby's like, fuck you. And he's like, fuck you? Like, you should be at a construction site if it wasn't for me. And then he responds with, fuck all of you. Fuck you, fuck you. And then to Rudy, respectfully.
Ooh, yeah.
Respectfully, fuck you. I was relieved to see Rudy say, he'll come around.
Yeah.
Because that could have gone a different way.
Yeah. That made me like Rudy even more, though. I was like, he's above this.
It made me less afraid of him, though. And ever since the beginning, I'm very afraid of him, and I've become less and less afraid of him as time has gone. Anyway, sometimes I expect people to say something, and I leave some time for that, and that didn't happen this time. Did not happen.
I've learned, actually, when you stop like that, waiting for us to say something, if we just are quiet for a second, the awkwardness hangs, and it's so funny to me that I just have to let it happen. I'm so sorry.
Awesome. So, okay, we got a lot to discuss about Eileen and her brother. So this is a dark display of the times. He's been institutionalized for being gay. He's had Mike Pence electric shock therapy. And
has he got the sponsoring rights to that?
Yes, it's Mike Pence branded electric shock therapy.
Oh, God.
And it seems to be working. And he claims he isn't gay anymore. And she actually do him some harm by saying, dude, you are. Like, there's nothing ashamed of it. But then it seems like he's been away from society for so long that she's like that she's basically like, times are changing.
And also at this time, I think a lot of people thought being gay was a choice. These times, a lot of people still think that. And so it was kind of cool to see her being ahead of the game. Like, don't lie to yourself. Like, I know, who you are. And he's obviously been brainwashed or is maybe just trying to say the right things and saying like, oh, no. It was really touching to see that. And I really liked her delivery of it, like really supporting him and who he truly is. Probably pretty rare for that time, especially.
Apparently he dressed up like a woman just as a joke.
Mm-hmm.
And that set his dad over the edge. And he's like, I'm not even, I don't consider myself trans. I was just joking around.
Yeah.
I was just being funny.
And that again shows kind of the small-mindedness, the misunderstanding, especially during that time,
right,
where you just think, oh, if you're gay, you want to be a woman, or if you want to dress in women's clothes, you're gay. Like people thought it all just went together, and that's so not what it is. It's such a spectrum, and everyone has their own individual identity. Again, kind of putting in some historical context really well and very fittingly.
Yeah, it was. I happen to know this because it was the year I was born. But the American Psychiatric Association, the APA, did not remove homosexuality from the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders until 1973.
Oh,
so up until like my lifetime, that was still classified as a mental disorder. I mean, wrap your
That's
head
crazy.
around that.
Also,
I
they're
know.
showing this is the bookend of electric shock treatment. That he said that they're not doing that anymore, almost hinting that it's not legal.
Yeah, I think he was trying to signal like this is the time where we realize that's not okay.
Yeah.
But so she also says Dad would fucking hate it, talking about how the world's changing. So are we just assuming that their dad is dead?
No, because remember he pulled up.
Do we know that that was her
I think
dad
that was
pulled
him.
up?
I
think
think
it was him. Yeah,
Because
I
Why
think
did
she
she
she's
say
looks
still
dad
terrified.
alive.
would-
Like I do not
Why
want
did she
to.
say Dad would fucking hate?
I think she just means like she doesn't talk to him anymore at all.
Okay.
So she
Fair enough.
assumes he would hate this.
So we talked about
Yeah.
it last week, how she has daddy issues, but it's not like you'd think. And
Mm-hmm.
and then we kind of didn't bring up the episode before it from when he was visiting with her mom and her son, and he pulls up, or we're led to assume that it's him pulling. To kind of connect all of them together, and she basically flat out says that he was, he basically cares about what people think in society, and his daughter seems to have even become more and more of a prostitute as a kind of middle finger to him.
Yeah.
And she really doesn't have a problem being on porn because of that. She even convinces Darlene not care.
Right.
Yeah, I think Gina alluded to this earlier, but I think we're in for a real reveal whenever they do reveal who her father is. My guess is he's either a politician, a policeman, or religious clergy. That he's one of those
that
three.
would be interesting if he's
Yeah.
like,
Or he could just be a regular,
religious
everyday
figure.
freaking piece of shit bigot.
He could be, but
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead
Could
and
just
put
be
my
an
money
asshole.
down. Yeah, I'll put my money down that he's one of those
He
three.
could just be a Trump voter. Bobby and his wife seem like they're doing well. They're gonna go see Hair, and she has a new ring. He bought 2 of those, the son of a bitch, of the same
Yeah.
fucking ring.
Are we to assume, by the way, then, that she completely knows what his new gig is? Like, she's got to be
I don't
okay.
know.
She's signing off
Oh,
on
I
him
think she doesn't know
running
at
the
all.
brothel. Oh,
I
you
don't
think
know.
she
She
doesn't
has
know?
no idea.
I don't know.
She just
Okay.
thinks he's doing really well, and she's excited to
Okay.
get rings, so she's not asking any questions.
Okay.
I took it as she has no clue.
Yeah,
I don't.
I'm
I don't,
not sure.
I don't think it's conclusive either way.
Yeah.
All right. That's how
Um,
I took it.
But I definitely don't think that that's a confirmation that she knows for sure. But he finds out his ex got beat by her husband in front of the kid. In front of the kids. Like that's where.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
That's rough.
So Larry's talking about taking his business to the next level. Seems to be working on a drug deal. And he has his
Yep.
he has Barbara, his bottom, do the drop for him. Bottom. And then Big Mike lets Tommy bring some dude in the back door to interrogate him. He's one of the guys that's skimming the quarters. And I like them moving the Johnny Walker, so to make sure the bullet doesn't go through and mess with those. Black Frankie is down to kill this guy.
Yeah,
he has no problem.
Had no problem with that.
I think
then
that
I kind
Tommy
of
told
on my
him to-
second.
I think Tommy told him to put up put up a front about it, right? I think
I
it was
agree.
an intimidation tactic.
And I think in the end, I think he said the thing about Johnny Walker just to get to the
Right.
guy.
Right.
Just to make it seem like I'm worried
This
about
is
this
more
bottle of
important.
whiskey
Yeah.
more than your head.
Yes.
Right,
Right.
right.
But it was brilliantly done. I mean, it worked. He sang.
After all this, I thought Vincent would lose his mind, especially after his growing frustrations. But then instead he asked Tommy if am I a made guy? No. He's like, but I'm with you, right? He's like, what do you need? And I think it's clear. At that point, I wasn't even thinking about that, but it totally makes it 100%. Once it started happening, I was like, oh, that totally makes sense. And we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
So I have a note, obviously, about the scene we already discussed about Lori asking, is he better or worse than Reggie? Like, give me a minute to breathe. She's like, sure, light a candle, go to church. Grief. And then CC has an interaction with an OG who's gotten out of the game named. He's like, you should get back in the game. That guy does not look like he's getting back.
Not at all.
But he's still living the lavish pimp lifestyle.
Yeah, who was the woman? Was that a former
It seems like it.
I
protege
think
of
that's
his?
his wife or his bottom.
But I think they're together now.
Right, it
Like,
seemed like
yeah,
a
yeah,
former-
definitely.
It seemed like
together.
a former associate.
all right.
But yeah, it's that I'm sure. Yeah, like I said, was probably a pretty powerful scene, especially for people players or seen The Wire. Gina and I unfortunately not get to have that experience, but anyway.
No.
So Thunder's out hustling. She's on the street hustling, which she's not necessarily supposed to do, but Alston does some kind words. Actually, compliments her eyes, and she's like, "Damn, Alston, it's been a while since I gave away for free, but I might have to make an exception."
Yeah, it seemed to show that they have a bit of a friendship, out on the street and passing at least. And he lit her cigarette, and I have to say, when this scene was going on, I felt a weird kind of feeling. The way it was being filmed, I thought someone menacing was going to come up to her.
Yeah.
And then he came up, and okay, it's okay. We're okay.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. I think that was done on purpose.
Yep.
To kind of, maybe you think it's going to go bad, and then, oh no, it's a friend, which then I was kind of caught off guard later on.
That
Yeah.
definitely does go bad. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The worst.
So right after that, Alston also goes and steals that cop's notebook. A huge risk for him.
Ooh,
I also
yeah.
he found it a little too easy, but whatever.
I mean, nobody locks their doors like in the 70s.
Yeah, but he knew
So,
exactly where they kept
I bought it.
too. Exactly where they kept it.
Well, in the
compartment.
glove compartment. Where else are they going to keep it?
Right. So
I support this storytelling.
Vincent goes in and just wails on the dude that's being his wife. And I like how another guy comes at him, and Timer's like, one at a time, keep it fair. And then he drops that guy too.
Well,
I love how he picked up one stick, wasn't heavy enough, and picked up another one. That was a beautiful touch.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
the beauty of this scene to me is the circular storytelling. Because in the first episode, you may remember the confrontation with his wife is in the pool hall. And
Is
then
it
we
the
come.
same guys?
I don't know if it's the same guys, but it looks like the same
I think
pool
it
hall.
might be.
And I think this is the beauty for me is seeing the first time Vincent goes into that pool hall in the first episode, he is not strong enough to take on these guys. And he's just not, and I don't mean physically strong, I mean mentally strong enough to own his own destiny. But over the course of the season, this guy has grown. We have a character arc,
It's
and Vincent is
almost
showing.
like this show showed a shift of power.
Damn it,
Drink.
Dylan, you stole my line where I was going with this whole thing. You robbed me. You stole my thunder.
We'll get shirts.
He stole his power.
You stole my power.
Shirts made. So Barbara goes into the drug deal and ends up there being cops. At first, I thought she was going to get hurt.
I thought she was
Yeah.
too.
That was
And-
such a sad scene, too.
And they're federal, and she looks like a long time unless she rolls on Larry, and she's like, "I'm not going to do that." So that's her.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's rough.
At the porn studio, they're all waiting for Harvey. His car broke down, and I like how encouraging Eileen is to Darlene. She's nervous, and she's like, "It's just fucking." But then her being recognized as a problem, and then she says, "So what?" Which really seems to, which is kind of too simple, but still seems to really resonate. I think she's kind of like, "You're right." So what?
Yeah, she's good with people, Eileen. She's good with the girls. Like, she's lived
She's
that
good
life.
with the guys too.
Very
know what I'm saying?
different.
Know what I'm saying?
Yes. It's very different than Harvey trying to talk someone into it, you know?
Right? Yeah.
And I think that speaks to kind of women helping each other out a little bit more.
I agree. But yeah, then it turns out Harvey's not making it, so they start packing up, and Eileen's like, "No, let's just do this. We rented the camera." That was her main argument. We rented the camera, and and everybody listens to her. Nobody even looks at her and is like, "I'm not gonna listen to her." Everybody completely.
Now, what I would have loved to have seen is a behind the scenes of Michelle McLaren directing Maggie Gyllenhaal on how to be a strong female director.
That would have been
Because
great.
as it was going on, I was like, hell yeah, like this is directed by a woman. Like their talks were probably so cool.
Yeah.
I would love to find some behind the scenes footage of that.
I bet the behind the episode from HBO that they usually put out, I think that would be.
Yeah,
As
there was a
podcasters,
quick one
we
at
should
the
probably
end
watch
of this.
I didn't
But-
see it. Anyway,
Yeah.
so Vincent tells Abby about the dude that beat up his wife. He's completely honest with her, and he's like, "My wife. I mean, my ex-wife. Whatever."
Ooh. When he said my wife, I can't say that without saying it like that.
The boy.
Sorry.
Very topical.
When he said
very
that,
topical.
thank you. Still
That never
relevant.
goes out of style. Never.
Never.
is.
When he said wife, I kind of like perked up, like,
Yeah.
ooh, you're gonna say that in front of your girlfriend, and obviously she took a bit of offense as well.
Yeah, and then he said it later too, and then this time he corrects himself, ex-wife, whatever, and then later he says it again and doesn't correct himself.
Yeah, that can't feel good on Abby's end.
But they are in this open relationship too, so I don't think it's. I don't know. I think it's.
Nah,
it's
even when girls
complicated.
say
I
it's
think
okay, it's
complicated.
not okay.
I think it's complicated.
Yeah.
She says Paul wants to start his own place and that he should back him, and he seems to scoff at the idea of. Doesn't seem like he's not interested at all, so we didn't really get a resolution. Then the cops come in looking for his notebook. He's in trouble with Sweeney.
Yeah, they looked. That was kind of a fun power shift right there.
Yeah,
Where,
it was.
Vinny thought they were going to shake him down for more money, and they're like, "Oh, well, actually, have you seen a notebook?
Right.
Like we're fucked.
I
So,
have
you seen it?
I have seen the Notebook. Noah and Allie do get together in the end, and then James Garner was Noah the entire time.
Spoiler alert!
Sorry about that.
Wow.
Guys. And they died
Come on,
together.
Dylan.
They died together in bed.
Oh my god! Wow, Dylan.
Well, you asked if I've seen the Notebook. I needed to prove it. So Sandra comes to Alston's work to talk to him about becoming a source, and she's got some fucking nerve.
Yeah. That was rough.
Bottom line, he needs to get named, and she just went in public in front of everybody, and the commission even see.
Mm-hmm.
That's the end of them right there.
Yeah.
The
It better be.
commissioner pulls him aside and says he'll clean up the department, but they have to handle it in-house. And he's like, "Where are you hoping to get to?" He's like, "Detective." I know that's shooting high, but he just like scoffs at him in the middle of saying that as being like, "Nah, it's not that high."
I
Yeah.
really liked that moment because it was like, no, wherever you want to go, I'm going to make it happen as long as you stay loyal
Right.
to me.
Right. I trust that guy.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
And that's it for Sandra. I wonder if she'll even be in the show.
I don't think we've
I
seen the
don't
last
know.
of her. I really don't.
I just think she easily could not be in the show anymore. Her story has come to an end. No, there could be more story to tell, but they could easily end it with that. But we'll
Yeah,
see.
it's true.
Alston
Yeah.
breaks up with Sandra, who storms away crying, and she says to Flanagan, "You tipped off the commission." He's like, "For your own good." I like that he doesn't try to lie about it either.
Yeah.
He's the moral compass of the show. He's the John Booker of the Deuce.
So honored.
So Eileen goes over everyone's head when she explains how the porn should be shot, how they're not shooting it right. And Harvey arrives during that, and he's like, "You just gave a good explanation of how action dictates camera movement."
Yeah, that was a really cool moment.
And then he's like, he seemed pretty impressed with it, and he's like, "You directed all of it?" And she's like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, finish." Instead of being like, "All right, well, I'll take over from here."
Yeah,
Pretty
he trusts
likable
her.
move. He does trust her.
And she's right. When she was explaining that, in my, I only have a reference of movies within the last 30 years, and I don't watch a lot of older movies, and so when she was explaining that in my head, I'm like, well, yeah, duh. Like, follow where the action is, the camera moves, but it's a totally different time, probably in film in general.
Yeah.
So to kind of have these ideas, and the fact that she got it intuitively, she didn't study Hitchcock, but she had an eye for it and got it in her own organic way is just a very cool moment for her.
Also, too, that the porn people working in the porn industry probably typically don't they're probably just like, dude, it's dick going in a vagina, just shoot it. That's the kind of attitude
exactly.
they're probably used to, instead of somebody
Yep.
looking at with some finesse that she clearly wants to have in it. So anyway, this is I thought that was a really good scene and good ending, and then he says, hey, we'll go check out that movie premiere if you want to. Okay, so Larry and Cece walking down the street is a complete recreation of the Midnight Cowboy I'm walking here scene, right?
Yep.
Oh.
Complete
I'm not
recreation.
super familiar with that
shot
reference.
the same. It even seems like it's shot on film.
Nice.
Similarly too. Were you prepared with that, John?
I was going to mention it, but I'm glad that you mentioned it. I mean, it is probably one of you mixed sort of two of the iconic films of Times Square of that era in your reference. And
I know what he mixed up.
Midnight Cowboy is the image. No, actually, it's a Taxi Driver where he says, "I'm walking here," and that's from Taxi Driver.
Lieutenant Dan says that too. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think Lieutenant Dan does later say that in Forrest Gump.
No, it's from Midnight Cowboy. Maybe they say it in Taxi Driver also, but that line is from. If you Google "I'm walking here," it's showing this scene, and it's Dustin Hoffman saying "I'm walking here."
I stand corrected. You're right.
To be me right now.
Yeah, but we're also right because they say it in Forrest Gump too.
anything that they're saying and they're referencing Midnight Cowboy though.
The way it's shot and what the two guys walking down, yes, very much Midnight Cowboy.
Yes, you win. Dylan.
Yes, there's a power dynamic that has been come to full circle.
Did you feel that shift?
I can feel it.
I feel the shift right now. I feel it right now. Anyway, they're basically hanging Barbara out to dry, and it seems like Cece is callous about it. And I feel like
he doesn't give a shit.
Yeah, Larry kind of seems to feel bad about it.
Oh yeah.
Now in the final montage
cold.
scene of him. It shows him in the diner with a piece of pie, and he pushes it away. He can't eat. So it shows that something's really not settling with him. Because who's gonna turn away some pie? Not me, sister. Not me.
Not Leon's famous pie.
Yeah. And so Eileen calls out for Thunder when she's passing by in a cab, and she calls her Ruby. She's the only person that calls her Ruby.
Yeah.
And I think that was important. She was like, Ruby, baby. And I don't know if Ruby didn't hear her. That's where I gather that she didn't hear her.
She didn't. This is when I knew it was going to go south for Ruby. Just that fleeting moment of trying to get her attention. That, to me, that was like, oh no. Ruby's not making out of the episode. Because it was just totally like passing by, just a coincidence. And like, how sad is that that's Eileen's last interaction with her?
Yeah.
Like a good friend. I
just found out while I have this up on the screen, the question marks and the Mysterians, they wrote the song "Can't Get Enough of You, Baby" that Smash Mouth covered. And
that's a cover?
Yeah, I didn't know that. That was the original song.
Wait a second. That's not
a
Smash Mouth a ridge?
No, that's not a Smash Mouth a ridge.
You've just rocked my world.
I know.
I am no longer subscribing to their fan page.
Their Wikipedia page is randomly up on my screen because I want to be prepared just in case I need to have a power dynamic with John Booker. But I randomly just saw Smash Mouth and I was like, why is Smash Mouth on this person's? In 1998, the cover version of "Can't Get Enough of You, Baby" by Smash Mouth reached the number 14 on the U.S. charts. I'm like,
wow, I had no idea that was a cover.
Trivia. Yeah.
Well,
I had no idea.
I changed you guys' world right now.
Yep.
Anyway, so weirdly, Ruby, I call her Ruby. I'm gonna show her respect. She's in a room with a weirdo dude who takes his money back because he didn't like the sex. And
that's not how it works.
Weirdly, he knows about who Rodney is, right?
Yeah, and she starts to look scared at that point.
Yeah, and then she's like, all right, get out of here.
She's like, that's not good.
Yeah, just get out of here. And then he's like, see you around Thunder Thighs. She's like, my name is Ruby. And then, weirdly, he just tossed her out the window. Honestly, this didn't really work for me, to be quite honest. It was just weird.
Well, before you go too far down that, in HBO's episode recap, George Pelikanakos says and tells us that the character that Ruby is based on actually was pushed out a window just like this and went through the awning of the hi-hat and died right out there in the street in front of the bar. So,
boom, true story.
Yep, true story.
Power shifted, guys. I can feel it. But in general, I don't know. I guess
I know what you mean, though.
the whole thing
I
just
kind of
felt
agree.
weird.
Like, it was really abrupt.
Right.
And I felt like they were building it up to be this, like, she was going to get beaten up for a while, and it was going to really hurt as an audience member to watch that, and it was going to be, like, a little bit more, like, devastating in that moment, and it was quick.
Also, he's about to walk out. He's about to walk out and see her around Thunder Thighs, and then my name is Ruby, and then that gets him to push her out the window.
Yeah.
It
escalated quickly.
It escalated. It skipped steps. It seemed like it.
I feel like it was a statement about how delicate life on the Deuce is. That one moment everything's okay, and then the next moment you're dead. Like I thought that was a profound statement about how delicate life is in that environment. That because we've become so close to these characters and so comfortable in this world, I think it's easy to forget how quickly fortunes can turn with these characters. So for me, it felt very authentic and real.
I just felt like I wish that she was putting up more of a fight, rather than dismissing him and then get pushed out that way that she. And it's fine. It's not the end of the world, but I wish that he did it because she was standing up for herself rather than being afraid and telling him to leave and then saying she's standing up for her name. It just was a weird thing, but I get what you're saying, and it's not the end of the world for me or anything. It just was a little odd. It was just a little odd, but anyway. Eileen and Harvey attend the premiere, and we see Fat Mooney off on the side, randomly drinking a beer off to the side, and I thought that was really funny.
Yeah. He's part of the industry. It's fun to see them bring those characters together, and you really get the idea of that industry. Like, it's a small world at this time.
Right.
And everyone kind of knows each other.
We also see a wonderful look-alike of Linda Lovelace, who was the star of Deep Throat, in an outfit that she was very famously photographed in. So again, they did their historical research. That actress looks just like Linda Lovelace and is dressed just like Lovelace was in one of her most iconic photos. So that was really intriguing for me to see that they brought in that little piece of history.
Cece and Lori aren't allowed up to the VIP room, and Cece seems to get upset about and thinks it's for racist purposes. And did they not check other people's tickets, or were they checking everybody?
They checked everyone's tickets. Seems like they were checking you needed a ticket. You're not in the porn industry, Cece. You know, like.
And then she's like, wait, you don't want to see it? And he's like, another porn film or whatever? Nah, I'm good. Which is like, man, wear your heart on your sleeve enough, man. Like, you went there to see it. Like, why are you like?
Yeah.
I think, though, it's a great symbolic moment of where the sex industry was out in the streets, and the pimps try and enter into the new arena of the sex industry, and they're not welcome. They're turned away. And so it's sort of this symbolic shift of yes, power, but also the welcoming presence of those. It seems like the white characters who were involved in the sex industry managed to transition to the future, and the black characters involved in the sex industry are having a lot harder time transitioning to the future of the industry.
Very good point.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Did you catch Lori looking up at Linda Lovelace on the stairs, getting all the cheers and the cameras flashing? You could see that Lori looked at that and was like, that's what I want.
Yeah.
So I feel like she's going to be breaking away from Cece, or at least attempting to, in the next season.
And
and then
the camera pans out and we see it's deep.
Interesting side note, Linda Lovelace actually later went on to become a starch antagonist against pornography, and really regretted doing that. But then towards the end of her career, actually flipped again and became okay with it, and oddly died in a car wreck in Colorado. She's no longer with us.
Oh, wow.
Speaking of death, the aftermath of Ruby's death with her body there on the sidewalk, and Cece makes a joke that she.
That was
Cece is a
horrible.
son of a bitch. He's
He
just
is,
a son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And
they're really, really driving that
He's like
home.
the villain of the show, basically. And
yeah.
And then Alston checks him right in the stomach, which was satisfying.
Really satisfying
Yeah, it was.
moment.
And then Abby kind of gives Vincent shit for him seemingly callous reaction to her death, but I didn't really read it as a callous reaction. It's just, I think that she's just not used to this world, and he is.
Yeah, I mean, she's been faced with some like hard times, not being able to make rent and things like that, but stuff like that does not compare to like death and the trauma of someone having that happen so quickly. Again, like Vinny's probably seen some things that are pretty hard, but for Abby, a young girl who's like kind of just entering into this world, I feel like that was pretty traumatic for her. And you could tell in her face, like she had been crying, like she was being affected by that, and not as much as him.
Definitely different than what's his name being killed. Reggie Love.
Oh right, yeah, very different.
And then we get the closing montage, which I also had read
so
online.
Good.
It was very similar to what they always did on The Wire. They always did similar montages.
That was how they closed every season. Yep.
And this was Barbara getting taken to booking, Larry not eating the pie, and the diner's also dead. It also made sure to show that.
Yeah.
And then
everyone's over at the massage parlor getting Chinese food.
Yeah, right. And Sandra's bummed about her article. Alston's at work, and he's kind of separated from everybody who's yucking it up, even Flanagan with everybody. And Alston's kind of off to the side by himself. And Bobby with Tiffany at the parlor, he's full-blown going with that. And that one promise he made to Vincent, too, right? And then Cece and Lori doing blow together, and the Reggie's Melissa, her not really connecting with them like to. Then Darlene filming a porn at Eileen's, careful and direction that she's giving her. And
did you notice the jacket that Eileen is wearing?
Yep.
And I wish I could say that I wish I could say that I noticed this on my own. I did not. I too watched the behind the scenes thing on HBO. It was Ruby's jacket.
Yeah.
Oh.
Remember how the other girl, her and Ruby had the conversation about the other girl and her jacket and how she held on to it? Well, now Eileen's wearing Ruby's jacket. So that was a poignant moment.
I wish we got to see Eileen's reaction to that death.
I know.
But that is a little bit of a reaction in it.
Yeah.
Right. But she was probably really... Again, that last interaction.
That was her only friend, her only peer, because everybody else was kids.
Yeah. Yep. And it's just brutal that the last interaction, she couldn't get her attention.
And then
it's just tragic.
Abby and Vincent together, and it really seems like something's eating. Because he's not settling well. And then the final shot of the hallway at the parlor, and
so good.
Business as usual with what's her name? The new
Ginger.
Ginger.
Yeah.
Just being like, I'm not going to do that. No, it's $30 if you want that. No matter what.
Yeah.
Blah blah. Because the guy was trying to haggle with her. Believe.
And that was a very similar shot to the first episode. I really like hallway shots apparently because I noticed that in the first episode it closed with Vincent in the hallway, and it was that really slow pulling out of the hallway. So I enjoyed that. I mean, that might be a bit of a Michelle MacLaren signature, at least in this series. And it's just really beautiful.
So anything else you want to add about this episode? We'll talk about the series in general and the entire first season on a bonus episode. And again, I do want to ask all you guys, so everybody has any thoughts, any questions, any conversation topics, anything you think we can run with. Otherwise, we're going to talk about the porn that I watch, and you guys don't want to hear that. So you guys,
the copious amounts of porn.
You guys probably want to. You probably want to.
You're going to get his top selections, and trust me, you don't want to know.
But yeah, that's the Deuce Drop at gmail.com or tweet us at the Deuce. And listen, even if it's something quick, it's cool to hear something you wrote on an email on the podcast.
Yeah.
It'd be a big
We
conversation.
like interacting
Right.
with
Yes.
people who are listening, and I think it'd be fun to do some question and answer.
Anything we want to add about the finale, or should we wrap it up?
I think we've covered it well. It was the one last thing I will say. It felt like I'm thrilled they're doing a second season, but it felt like a nice bookend close to the story. That if they didn't tell us any more, that we got a really complete story
Dude, I want
in that
more,
first
though.
season.
I don't want to entertain that idea. I don't want to entertain that.
No,
Don't say that, John. They might cancel it.
They've
You've got a
already
lot of
greenlit it.
power over there at HBO.
Yeah.
Don't say that.
Power dynamics could be changing.
Power dynamic. Yeah. I thought it was a great episode. I really started to fall in love with the show probably midway through. Once I really started getting to know the characters, I really looked forward to like what's going to happen next week, what more is going to be revealed. And I'm leaving this season. I can't wait for season 2.
I think there was only
And I
one
feel like
episode that I
we've
remember.
learned a lot, and
There was only
it's
one
been great.
episode that I actually didn't like, and we discussed that when we didn't
we did.
third or fourth episode. But other than that, I almost loved everything.
Yeah. Yep.
So far, so good. All right, why don't you tell people they
Well
can follow you
done.
on the internet, John Booker?
yeah, follow me on Twitter at John JohnKBucher, or check out my website tellingabetterstory.com.
What about you, Gina Murtalo? Where can people?
Well, people can find me at Gina Murtalo on Twitter.
Alrighty.
And you're welcome to follow
Well,
me.
And tweet at her. Weird stuff.
Tweet at me. Don't tweet me weird stuff.
And for me, you can follow me at Shuckster. That's SCHUCKSTR. If you go check out the Watch and Talk, my movie review podcast, we just did a full episode about the Saw series. I don't know if a lot of fans of this show are going to be fans of the Saw series, but we also reviewed the new Saw movie. We did a non-spoiler review at the beginning and then a spoiler section at the end. So check that out. And next week we're going to be reviewing Thor, but in general, we do fun top 5 lists at the beginning of it, and we review a movie, and like I said, we do non-spoiler section at the beginning, so at the very end is where you can turn it off, so you feel free to listen to it. Yeah, go check that out. It's watchandtalk.com. For the show, you can follow us at The Deuce Drop, email us at thedeucedrop@gmail.com, tweet us at Deuce Drop. I just said follow us, but now I said tweet us. And Facebook at facebook.com.
What do you want them to do?
At facebook.com/ The Watch and Talk. And that's it. I'm Dylan Shuck.
I'm John Booker.
And I'm Gina Murtalo.
And we'll see you next week. All right, bros and brodettes. Long
And
episode.
scene.
Long episode.
I know.
It was a good one.
A long episode for a long episode.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.